Of the minutes of 1/5/2023. I had some comments and I can't find the minutes right now. I've lost them someplace here in my, it had to do with a discussion around Deerfoot Road and some comments I made.
Okay.
So I'm unable to put my finger on them at the moment for some reason.
I can. Do you want me to share them? Would that be useful?
Yeah, it probably will be. Thank you.
Yep. Let me just get to that. My computer is lagging. Sorry, guys. All right. I'm sorry it's so small. I don't know how to best.
Let's see, Deerfoot Road conversation.
So here's starting at 124 and it goes over here.
Okay. Can you scroll up to the right side? No, not make it big. Yeah, go. Okay. Scroll down, please. I know we need to go to the next page, I think.
Yeah. It was a long discussion.
It was, yeah, it surely was.
All right, hold
on. There was just some sentencing that didn't make any sense. So you know what? Instead of bogging down this meeting, why don't we table this till the next meeting, and I'll send the updates once I find it.
Sounds like a plan.
Rather than trying to stare through that. We have the public meeting here and so forth. Okay.
Yep.
Is that okay with everybody that we postpone approval of those until next meeting? Thank you. All right. Okay, so first up here is continued stormwater management permit notice of intent, 200 Turnpike Road, map 28, lot 3C, construction of warehouse space, salt shed and other site improvements. In accordance with the provisions of the Southborough Stormwater and Erosion Control Bylaw, Southborough Zoning Code, Chapter 174, Section 13.5, Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearings on Thursday, January 26, 2023 at 7 p.m. by a virtual Zoom meeting on the petition of CMJ Ventures, LLC, for construction of warehouse space, salt shed, and other site improvements at 200 Turnpike Road, map 28, lot 3C. Ben, do you mind taking over in my behalf since I was absent for the first hearing on this and was continued last time?
Yeah, happy to.
Thanks, great.
Welcome, Peter. Thank you for coming in. Melissa, I was a little confused looking through some of the correspondence. The wetlands issue, I don't recall an extensive discussion of that last time. This is something new that has come up in the last 3 weeks.
I think it's not necessarily new. I think it's just something that has kind of been on the back burner. So I'll let kind of Joe go over that is probably the best.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the wetland issue was brought up in previous memos that Ellie submitted, and at least mentioned, I think, at the previous hearings, that there was still a question on the wetland flags, and I think what it comes down to is what are the wetland flags? What are the labels on the wetland flags in the field that are shown on the site plan? The original plan that was submitted had flags A1 through A12, and that's all that was on the plan. But the flagging in the field continued through A19, A20, I think even beyond that. I met with the engineer at that time, Mark Santoro, when he was revising the flags and delineation. He put in revised delineation flags labeled A12A through A19A, A20A. And was supposed to put those on the revised plan. A revised plan was submitted, the flags were never put on the plan. So the flags that are on the current plan, the question is, are those representative of the original flags that were in the field that were A12 through A19, or are they representative of the flags in the field labeled A12A through A19A, which were up gradient? So that's the issue on the flags on the east side of the property. On the west side of the property, on that date that the A line was revised, some wetland B line flags were added on the west side of the property. Those again never got put onto the site plan. They were added because I thought that the edge of that wetland was probably pretty close to putting a 100-foot buffer onto the subject property. Again, those plans aren't on the current plan, but a previous wetland delineation from that adjacent property to the west is shown on the plan. And I think it's probably pretty close to where those B series flags were placed, but I can't be sure of that based on not those B flags not being on the plan. So that's the issue with the flagging on that side. And
Thank you.
hope that clarifies any issues.
Thank you. And so question for you, Peter. These flags, while they may or may not be shown on the plan currently or in exactly the right location, the addition of these flags doesn't put any work into, for instance, a no-touch zone or anything like that. Is that a correct statement?
I believe that to be the case. The ones on the west, what we've said is we don't have any work activity there. The driveway does get very close, so I don't disagree that they're within limits of the boundary of the property. But we're asking to just be specific about the flags that are part of the scope of work in your decision, because I don't want there to be ramifications in the future that somehow we've implied that something is beyond the work limits. So I was explicit about that in my cover letters to the commission, is it will just lock this down for where the work limits are. Those are the wetlands that are involved.
Yeah, and we had asked just as a favor if you could show the wetlands along that access drive, which was appreciated and helpful.
Yeah. And we showed that on the east. We inherited this job, and I'm sorry for the circumstances that we both found ourselves in. You as the commission trying to approve it, a project that was in the middle of a review with another consultant. But they did give us what they called their existing conditions plan, sealed it, and covered the Fuss and O'Neill comments through a date certain, because it's on the plan. And then on our plans, they gave us their CAD drawing. And just to reinforce it, my son Zachary did go out in his survey work to tie in to the flags that Joe was referencing, and we did locate them on the ground by survey. And I think Joe had, in his memo, had other flag numbers. We didn't find those, but what we did find is a coinciding of wetland flag A19, and that coincided with an A5-5/22. That one was corroborated. It's on our plan. And then Zach, at the time he was there, flagged two new flags, 19B and 20B. 19B came 20 feet closer to the limit of work, and 20B was 45 feet closer to our property. So it was showing the wetlands were going further west and south. And then the wetlands started going back east again, and that's outside of the work scope, so we didn't bother going further. But those are shown on the plan. We showed the original locations and the new locations, and then put the 20-foot buffer zone to the new flags that we And it still allows the work to proceed as planned. One other thing that's changed since the last time we saw you folks was that when we went to the planning board, one of the planning board members had some comments for us, of which was that the town of Southborough's DPW yard is zoned residential. I guess the ZAC hasn't considered that important to update their zoning maps. Might be good to consider doing that maybe because the DPW's been there for a long time. I can't imagine it's going to change. But it is residentially zoned. And the idea is that because we're a commercial development, there'd be some buffer retained between us and a residential property. And so the idea that we had was that we'll put back a row of trees in that zone. And so what we did is we proposed, because again, we're getting down gradient, we proposed birch clump and viburnum. They're both native species to put down at the limit of work. And that would allow a buffer to then transition into the existing plant material that's between us and the DPW yard. And one little corner does approach DCR land. But it would put back kind of what's going to get lost when we do this work. I do have some other exhibits to look at, but if you're fine with where we're going with this, I'm fine with it. To me, I just want to get the project done for John Crandall, and I don't believe that the wetlands are going to prevent us from doing that work. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So there's, Joe, in your mind, there's still some confusion about what's on the ground versus what's on the plan. Could we sort of, without derailing things, simply in the conditions of finding of fact, simply that we're not certifying, flags, 2 or 3 or 4 flags because of this, or are these things that are critical to have noted on the plan?
Yeah, well, I think it sounds like if they found flag A19 in the field and they flag that they added 19B was about 20 feet up gradient, that sounds about right for where the revised flag A19A would have been. The question is on the other flags, A15 through A18, the flags that were revised in the field were all labeled with an A at the end, the revised flags. So that line is also closer to the property line. Now, if the flags that are on the plan are just mislabeled relative to the flags in the field, then they're okay. But if they're showing the original flags, then the buffer zone would extend somewhat further onto the site. Based on where the A19 flag that they added, I haven't looked at it in the field, but being about 20 feet up gradient, the other flags are probably roughly in that similar distance. I don't think it would bump anything within 20 feet based on that.
Okay.
That would be my
There's also-
assessment too.
There's also the question about being within 20 feet of bordering land subject to flooding, which
Yeah.
they want to address. Yeah.
Yeah, that one I have to address too.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll get to that. So okay.
And the B line flags that I was referring to were located, to the north of 206 Turnpike Road, the building. So this the wetland that would have cast a buffer zone onto the northwest corner of the site. And like I said, I think based on what I remember being in the field, that it's probably pretty close to what they're shown for their historic line in that area. I felt that the wetland was right around 100 feet from the property line in that location.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So Peter, you have some additional information to.
Just the sealed plan from Santora's office was dated 6/15/22, which I believe post dated the field review with Joe's office. So I felt confident, and then we've got the drawings, you know, the CAD drawing from Mark Santora. We also didn't rely on that. We did do our ground survey work, and I know Zach did go in the field and did tie in. So I feel fairly confident that we are representing the right line there. But I also wanted to say is that the line is heading further east. The closest point would be the 19A flag that we have tied. And I have no problem with the commission, again, restricting some language in the decision, allowing the work to proceed, but then not tying it to this wetland resource area for future works tasks that we would have to come visit you again if we were to change this design. I am perfectly fine with that. The last piece that I did need to address, because Joe is absolutely right about the land subject to flooding, we did not observe a 20-foot setback to that. We are working up adjacent to that. If I needed to ask you for a formal waiver on that, and I should have, and I apologize for not, because again, Mark Santora's plans also had done that. It's not a large area, but to resolve the grading on this plan, we originally had a 1-to-1 riprap slope here. The planning board didn't care for that, and we changed it to a 2-to-1, where we're going to be prepping this slope with a jute fabric and then hydroseeding it with New England wildflower native mix, so that we can have a natural slope as a transition to the limit of work. And so we needed all the room we could get. I can't say it any other way. So we did work, we did put our erosion control barrier right at the edge. We're not putting any fill into land subject to flooding, but we are working up adjacent to it. And so again, if it's a formal waiver request for that, I would ask for it now. And if that is not something that's needed, then the plans do reflect that condition. Thank you.
Thank you. And one other thing we talked about, that small western watershed in the.
What did you find? Did you solve the problem?
I figured out what's going on. It was frustrating. I'll admit to having probably spent an hour and a half looking at it because it was just frustrating for it not to resolve quickly. But I ran it through both HEC HMS and then also through TR55. And so HydroCAD wasn't a fluke within HydroCAD. It's the areas of the watershed, change from existing to proposed. The proposed watershed is a little bit smaller than the existing one. You'd expect the flow rate to go down, but the curve number went up by 1. And the change in runoff, you show it as being different by 1/100th of a CFS. Well, when you get past all the rounding stuff, existing of 0.49 CFS and a proposed of 0.50 CFS for an increase of, 0.1. Really, it's 0.494 CFS existing in 0.496 CFS proposed. And
how many cubic feet is that?
The way that, the way the rounding works out, the numbers are basically identical. And then,
I think Elizabeth just drank it out of her glass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And now the difference in volume here, the cubic feet, there's an increase of 20 cubic feet. But I should point out that when you ran the HydroCAD over a 72-hour window, which doesn't capture a whole lot beyond the 24 hours, but the tail, I think, does extend on that unit hydrograph out for quite a ways, even if it's just a tiny little bit. I think the difference shown here is clearly within the computational error of the method that the DEP, asks us to use, and they're functionally identical. So you've asked for a waiver, I think, just because the numbers that were shown on the application show this increase of 0.01 CFS. I think it's appropriate to have the waiver, but I'd certainly recommend to the commission that we approve it, because it's the difference is negligible and probably doesn't even exist, because these software tools they're a pretty blunt instrument for such a tiny measurement. So anyhow, that's what I came to.
Well, thank you very much. My hat's off to you for figuring that out, beyond what we had done. But we've had this circumstance a few times, and we're using a tool that's thinking about watersheds in much larger areas than these
Yeah.
really small ones, but they didn't give us a different set of tools when we have this condition. So we just got to kind of follow the recipe and hope that everybody's going to look at it the same way we did. Is this a reasonable number or not? And I think it's very reasonable. So thank you for the support.
Of course. Okay, any questions, comments, or concerns from the commission?
Ben, since you rolled up your sleeves and you got your slide rule out
Yeah.
and went through all the drainage calculations and runoff and so forth, I was interested to see how that fell out. So thank you for that.
Certainly.
So it's basically insignificant, if anything at all. So that satisfied me.
So it sounds like, I don't know if the rest of the commission is on board with this, but there are four flags that are probably located correctly. I don't know that anyone's interests are really served, from what we've learned tonight, to go and track that down and get an absolute answer to it, because it won't affect the project in any way. It won't change anything. So one thing we could do is have a finding of fact that flags 15, 16, 17, and 18 are not, the commission is not approving that as a wetland line.
Are we being asked to verify any of this wetland line at this point?
I think the remainder of it, yes.
I mean, so I think what Peter was mentioning earlier that we've done before is that we can confirm the wetland boundary for this project and this DEP filing only. We've done that previously, so that's one option that you could do for that language if that's something that the commission is open for.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Either way.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Yeah, one of my other comments was just noting that no documentation on the delineation had been submitted, either previously or with the new flagging. That would make it a little bit easier to be more comfortable with the new flags that were put in as far as DEP BVW forms.
Okay, these are the BVW data sheets.
Delineation form, right?
Okay. Let's, before I forget, I don't know, I haven't looked at the attendees here, but if there's anyone from the public who's come here to speak about this tonight, if you'd like to offer questions or comments, please use the raise hand function in Zoom and we'll promote you up. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. So as far as the way of resolving this flag issue, I guess, Peter, what would your preference be? Would a verification solely for this project, or a verification of all but the four flags that there's a tiny bit of confusion on?
Honestly, whatever everyone's comfortable with. My goal has always been just to get the project approved. I didn't like getting involved in this project in the method I had to get involved in it too. So it's hard to pick up the pieces of someone else's work. And that's what we've had to do here and try to improve it. You know, we went from a project that had 10 to 15 foot walls around the perimeter. And when I first looked at it, I even said to John, I said, did you ever get this priced up? Because I don't think you could afford to build it. And he did get it priced up, and he did call me back and say, yes, I can't afford to build it. So, we came back with a different plan. And I just feel like this is a really good plan now to allow someone to use their property the way they had intended and be more respectful to the environment that we're in. So whatever the commission finds is necessary, I will do. I'll leave it at that.
I think the cleanest way is just to, we condition it that it's a verification for this one project, and then work that takes place in the future. Having this record will make the delineation a little easier, presumably, if it comes to that. But we'll deal with it in the future. And if that's acceptable to the commission, the next step would be a motion to close the hearing.
I can make one comment through the chair.
Oh, please do.
One other comment I just wanted to bring up is that a invasive plant management plan was submitted. And generally it looks appropriate. There was one question I had on the plan as far as how Japanese knotweed was going to be addressed. At one point in the plan, it says there will be grubbing, and then it says Japanese knotweed will not be grubbed, which is correct. It should not be grubbed because it will spread propagules. So I just want to, clarify how Japanese knotweed was going to be addressed at the site.
Yeah, I saw your comment on that, and I apologize for not bringing that up myself. I do anticipate a pre-construction conference, and I don't know how much knotweed is in the areas that we have to work, because I'm not that familiar with it, but I did want to have an invasive management plan in place before we started. So I think it would be best to do that in the field, and I would anticipate that you and Melissa would be the ones attending the pre-construction conference. And we could delineate where those are and then come up with a conclusion on what's the best way to do it. I just don't want to wing it here tonight and not get it right. So I'm more than open to satisfying you and Melissa in the field with whatever the program needs to be. We've had pretty good luck with it. One methodology we used over there at 84 Main was we actually smothered it, and it did really well, because actually in an area where we had to pull it back, when we unsmothered it, it started propagating. So, smothering is a real good technique, and it may work actually in the area that we have to do our work activities in. Long as I don't, if it is down in my rain garden area, that would be a problem. But if it's where I'm actually bringing the fill down, it's going to be a perfect scenario. So,
yeah, I think the biggest patch is probably where there's going to be some fill.
yeah.
Just have to be careful if you are doing any cutting and handling of the cut material. And if I may, through the chair, one more quick comment on a remaining item in the our memo is WPA Form 3 had noted the site was not in an ORW. I don't know if the commission feels that form should be corrected, but it is important to have a correct form submitted for the record.
Can we simply correct that with a finding of fact that the project is located within an outstanding resource water?
We can definitely put that in there.
If we can, with that, and then the
We can also require the revised sheet also to be submitted, if that makes the most sense to the commission.
yeah. I mean, Joe brings up a good point. It should be correct. So just as a condition, we can do that, and then of course the resolution of how the knotweed will be dealt with will be handled in the pre-construction meeting. Okay, so we'll be putting together the conditions and voting on that at the end of the meeting. For right now, we're just looking to, if it's the commission's will, to close the hearing.
And are you going to close both hearings together?
Excuse me, yes, thank you. Closing the hearing for the notice of intent in the stormwater management permit. Someone would like to make a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmano.
Yes.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your opportunity to present this. And then Melissa, I know I had some other items, but we're not ready. So I think I'm dismissed, correct?
Yes, you're dismissed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Have a good
Have a good
evening.
one.
Have a good
Thanks
night.
again, Ben.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, moving on. Next up, continued notice of intent. ROW within Turnpike Road and Corderville Road, replacement and installation of gas main infrastructure within right of way. That's ROW. Excuse me a second. Here we go. Okay, in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southfield Wetlands Bylaw, the Southfield Conservation Commission will hold a continued public hearing on Thursday, January 26, 2023 at 7:10 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider notice of intent for a project located on, or actually in a right-of-way within Turnpike Road and Corderville Road, map 28, lot 21, for the applicant Jennifer Bottaro for Eversource Energy. The project description is for the replacement installation of gas main infrastructure within right-of-way.
Yeah, Travis, if you want to start and do an overview of from last time and the revisions you've made. You are muted, sorry.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Good evening. So last time we had met, we kind of did a project overview, project scope, and the locations, and listed out the resource areas that we'll be working with. So we didn't have a DEP number, and the peer review wasn't done last conservation hearing. So it was continued. Within that time, we do have our Mass DEP number, and we did receive comments this morning from peer reviewer. This afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, we did send responses to all of those comments. In addition to those comments, we provided some supplemental material, including the ER map, our environmental resource map, with updates to the labels, including the 20-foot no disturbance zone for all resource areas, and also the local 100-foot buffer zone to all the resource areas as well. In addition to that, we did update the WPA Form 3 with a couple items that the peer reviewer had noted. And we provided some BMP specifications for any potential dewatering activities along the project site as well.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from conservation members or our consultant?
Yes, the chair. I did have a
Certainly.
chance to go through the responses, and they did, as was mentioned, revise the plans and the WPA form. Those all look good. There's some question on some of the resource areas. Whether they're as extensive, quite as extensive as I had indicated or not. The bottom line is, for most of those areas, or for all those areas, it wouldn't involve, if they're as extensive as I believe, it wouldn't involve any work in a resource area. And only a couple of those would involve changes to the buffer zone that would, somewhat expand their work in the buffer zone. And there's 3 of those areas. Just for reference, it would be wetland W2 under comment 3B, wetland W1 under comment 3E, and wetland W1 under comment 3F, where I felt the wetlands were somewhat more extensive, but still remain below the toe of slope of any of the roadways. They also did update stormwater information, provided stormwater information. My point there was, essentially that it's not an exempt project, but clearly many of the stormwater management guidelines do not apply, or standards do not apply. And that looks good. With regard to the numbering of the wetland flags, they did update that, and my comment was more to the site plan and not the environmental resource figures, but they did update it on the figures, and that does help. I'm trying to think if there's anything else here. I think that pretty much covers it. Let's see. I did have a comment, comment number 6, that I thought that the existing erosion control barriers would be sufficient to cover any of the expanded wetlands. I'd like to amend that comment a little bit. I think the area that's at the southeast corner of Route 9 and Middle Road would need the erosion control barrier extended probably to Middle Road to include what I feel is a wet meadow area. The other ones I think are all sufficient to cover any increase in wetlands area. And I think that pretty much covers my comments.
Tonight, there was a whole flurry of information that came in. Joe, is that what you've reviewed at this point?
Yes, I did review that this afternoon.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because I did not have a chance to look at that. Anybody else have any questions, comments? No. Anything from the public, please raise your hand and we'll let you in.
Nada.
Nothing, okay. So I think we have everything we need to be able to close the hearing. Do we hear a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
A second?
Second,
All in favor by roll call vote?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Gregory. He's trying.
Where is it? Where is it?
He's really trying.
you're on mute, Russ.
But I'm pushing, so I'm not. I don't know. Anyway, yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmano.
Yes.
Also, perfect. All right.
All right.
Yeah, I think
All right,
Travis
thank you.
will do the conditions at the end, but I will have the order of conditions to you by noontime tomorrow.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Have a good night. Thank you. Okay, next up is newer continued business, Economic Development Committee discussion of EDC coordinator position.
So we have Rob Anderson here. He's just loaded in. He is the chair of the EDC. So I will let him take over to discuss this potential new or change position, I guess.
Hi, Melissa, thank you. A pleasure to meet everyone. I'm Rob Anderson. I am the chair of the Economic Development Committee. One might think that conservation and economic development are adversaries. I actually think that there's some complementary services because both economic development and conservation are meant to improve the quality of life for residents. And I think one of the things that we have discovered, we do and have had in the past a part-time position as an economic development coordinator for the town. And one of the things that we discovered while we had Marika Munsif with us was that she was doing much more than a part-time position. And one of the things that she excelled at, and one of the things that the Economic Development Committee found great value in, was in grant applications. And we discovered that when she left, in the research that we as a committee were doing, that there are a variety of economic development grants out there and grants for other committees. And so one of the things that we thought about as a committee and in discussions with some of the select board was that wouldn't it be great if the town could try to find a way to capitalize on those grants that are out there, as well as maintain some of those things that the EDC has identified as goals, which are business recruitment, new construction, and finding the right talent to kind of help move us forward to make sure that the residential tax rate remains low. So one of the things that we as the EDC have done was made the proposal to the select board. We did receive a 3-to-1 vote in favor to bring forward a job description to the personnel board for a full-time position. Now, obviously, one of the things that will be asked at town meeting and of other people is, will the person who does the economic development role just do grants for the EDC? That's not how the Economic Development Committee views it. There are grants that have to do with invasive species in wetlands. There are grants that have to do with trails. There are grants that have to do with infrastructure, sidewalks, things that from an economic development standpoint make the town better, makes us more attractive to people who want to live here and people who want to work here. And so that is why the Economic Development Council has proposed to the select board the full-time position. One of the things that, as the chair and with the feedback from my members on the committee, was that we should talk with as many boards and committees as possible to just say, this is our vision, this is what we want to do. And whether or not that there was a gap where someone whose focus was on grants could assist the staff that you had, whether or not you could find value in someone who could help Melissa on grant applications, help identify some of them in their normal searches for those things that might be economic development related and the like. So I had sent an email. I made the request just to come in to give a little bit of our vision, what we're hoping, and to let you all know that the Economic Development Committee had made the proposal and we're soliciting feedback from our partners. So I want to thank you so much for the time. I do believe I said I'd be short, and that's what I aimed to do. But I am available to answer any questions if there are any from members of the commission.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Rob? No?
I would be excited personally as the, because we do the municipal vulnerability preparedness program, in which I'm the, I don't even remember what they call me, the administrator. So there's a lot of grants that I think that this would definitely help, you know, put together for that aspect. So for that, I'm thankful. So thank you, Rob.
Yeah, there are the action grants that come as a result of the being an MVP certified community, and they are competitive, and there's a story and there's an awful lot of work, and the way in which to support that and bring those in is collaboration between people. And I think a full-time position also adds a level of collaboration that can happen. So I do appreciate that. And as someone who did the MVP work in the municipality I used to work, oh my goodness, it's a lot.
It's a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit.
Well, one thing for sure, if you don't apply for the grant, you're not going to get it.
Exactly. There's 100%. And the fact is, as a result of the pandemic and some of the things that have been put in place as a result of that, there's an awful lot of federal funding out there, as well as state funding for initiatives to kind of enhance people who, let's be quite honest, might not be traveling into the office, and they might want to walk on the trails in their communities just to get out and kind of see nature. So those are some of the things that could be out there.
So is there any kind of a vote of support required or anything like that? Or
well, it's I would love a vote of support, but I don't have to make that request. I think one of the things that I believe, and you mentioned it about grants, if we try to go forward with this idea without at least soliciting feedback, positive, negative, ideas for best practices, without talking with other boards and commissions, we're doing a disservice to the residents of the town. So, while a vote of support would be welcome, and I would love it, I think just the fact that the commission knows that we respect and want your opinions, either one-on-one at town meeting via vote, I think it's something that we want to demonstrate.
Got it. Okay. At least from my perspective, you have my support. I'll caucus the other members here to see if they're in agreement or not. Others? I see a nod from Russ. A nod from Elizabeth.
I'm feeling a little bit more tepid. I understand certainly the desire for more assistance. In fact, the commission has a desire ourselves for a little more administrative assistance also. I think I just need some more time to sort of cogitate on things.
Yes, I think I mentioned, but I will reiterate that, we did make this presentation to the select board. It was not unanimous. I think there's, one of the things that we hope through the Economic Development Committee is to increase the commercial taxes collected for the town without causing a detriment to the residential tax rate. That's our goal. I think the fact that we could potentially get some state and or federal grants kind of is the return on investment. So that's kind of the position and the argument that we're making in this particular case. But like I said, any feedback is welcome for our committee.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No. All right. Well, with that, thank you, Rob.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. If I might, when I report back to my EDC committee, I will report to them that for the most part, we're kind of in support. The concept sounds good, even if there wasn't a vote. And I think if you guys feel comfortable with that, I am as well.
Okay.
Fabulous.
Yep, thank you. All right.
Thank you so much.
So have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, next up for continued business is request for 2-year extension in the S&P for 280 Turnpike Road, Barlaney Business Park. This is where the DEP holds the superseding order of conditions, and this would be to extend the stormwater management permit for 2 years, with DEP extending their permit. So the DEP permit is still valid.
It is still valid until I think like June or something, but the request is already into them. So I did check with Central Region. They received the request and they have no intention not to issue it. Is kind of what they put it. They haven't done it yet, but they don't have anything that they see that would not issue the extension.
And do they hold this because of a successful appeal? Is that?
Yes. Did
Yes.
Did it get appealed or did we? I don't think we denied it. I think it was appealed. Yes.
Yeah, it was appealed by neighbors.
Okay.
And I think those neighbors are no longer there. It's moved on.
Probably.
Yeah, so.
So where does this end? This has been an ongoing renewal since I've been on the board. And Mark, I think I've got about as much time in now as you had when I got on. This is
Correct, yeah.
weird. It's very weird to me.
Yeah, I think it has to do with, the site business conditions, COVID work from home hasn't helped it certainly.
Sure, certainly. I get all
building.
that, but all the standards have changed dramatically since then is what I'm getting at. When does this type of permit extension end? This is a long time now.
15 years, right?
Yeah,
I guess it's a good question for DEP.
2008.
I mean, DEP, from what we understand, Melissa, they're intending to extend it.
Correct.
The stormwater management permit that we issued, nothing has changed with respect to our bylaws since then.
Not yet.
Right. Right.
And once it does, if they renew again, they'll be required to
I
meet the
think
new standards. Is that-
I think technically the way it's written, they would be able to request one additional extension under the new amendments. And then after that, it would need to be brought up to any changes within the bylaw and regulations.
So there's an end in sight. Yeah. Okay.
There could be
There
an
could
end.
be.
Yes.
All right, do we hear a motion to extend? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second,
All in favor by roll call vote?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Gregory,
yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, next is request for certificate of compliance, 2A Asari and 74 Oak Hill Drive. That was DEP number 290-999.
Yes, so we have Mitch from Goddard here. As a refresher, we last discussed this in 21 or 20 for the request for the certificate of compliance. And the major holdup was that we required 2 years of monitoring reports and we only had one. So we requested an additional year of monitoring and to try and remove or contain the invasive Japanese knotweed as much as possible. So they have submitted supplemental reports. I think it's 2 years, both in November. And Mitch can kind of go over those findings.
Yep. So over the past 2 years, we've visited the site and removed Japanese knotweed, both in November. I had a crew out there and we basically took shovels and used our hands to rip out the knotweed roots as best as we could. That was in the November of 2021. Then this year, November 2022, we went out there and we found it was most effective to just rip the knotweed out by hand instead of with shovels. It was more effective in pulling up larger root masses of the knotweed by just grabbing the stems. We didn't use herbicide. There's, since the knotweed patch was so large, it would have taken a very long time to use the glyphosate treatment to cut and dab onto each knotweed stem. So over the past 2 years, we've done the monitoring and we've done good work to keep the knotweed stand contained and attempted to remove the knotweed. After the first year of knotweed removal, we noticed that the knotweed stems themselves were quite stunted. Typically on that lot at the beginning of the project, they were over our heads, 6-7 feet tall each stem, and by 2022 they were only up to our knees. So after this November, there's no more knotweed stems present in the mitigation area. So we'd be requesting the certificate of compliance, knowing that we did our knotweed removal for 2 years and we've done monitoring reports for 2 years now.
So the question I have is, once we issue the COC, who's going to be out there pulling out more knotweed? Because it seems to keep coming back.
Yeah, it's tough because there's knotweed in the right of way. There's knotweed outside the mitigation area, within there, the rest of the property. So it's almost bound to grow back. But the applicant's done his due diligence in removing it and keeping it contained as best as possible. And overall, the entire restoration area is free of invasives minus the knotweed. So, over the course of this whole project, the entire mitigation area has been treated for invasive species. So there's no bittersweet or glossy buckthorn, multiflora rose, which were all pretty prevalent in the area.
Okay. Any commission members have any questions? What's going on with Russ's video over there?
Keeps going. Yeah, it's. I text him every once in a while and tell him he's flashing.
I don't know what he's doing there. So do I hear a motion to issue the COC?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Welcome back, Russ. All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Gregory,
yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasquano.
Yes.
Mitch, I'll get this to you tomorrow.
All right, great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Let's see.
So I think the next 4 are being continued.
Yeah, so, yeah, the next was the SMP for 147 Middle Road continued, 149 Middle Road continued, 151 Middle Road continued, and 61 Breakneck Hill Road continued.
So these are all by one developer that we've agreed to do in a batch. So 151 Middle is not quite right yet, right? Not quite. Yeah.
Ready.
Yeah, you're ready. Thank you. So this is the one against the stream where the trolley tracks were. And if you look, the silt fence is still there. And I think we've talked about the concerns previously about that landscaping bed. It's kind of like built up to the silt fence with a lot of the mulch like basically being held up by that. So the big concern is when they remove that, it might hold now, maybe not now. If it was a normal winter and it was frozen, but come spring, I think that whole side would slide. So they're going to rectify that first, and then we will do the rest of the COCs at the same time as well.
Okay, so that silt fence is holding a house from falling in the ditch.
Maybe not the
Only
house,
kidding. Only
but
kidding.
the landscaping, yeah.
Yeah. Every time we go by that, my wife looks at the house and said, they don't have a front yard.
No one lives there. But when I drive by every day, I go, no one lives in that house yet.
Well,
Is it empty?
I think it is empty based on driving by every single day and making
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know that this property is kind of what's been driving the COC request. Someone did purchase it, someone was living there, so maybe they already moved. They've been trying to get this closed out. So that was kind of the main reason we tried to get it on the agenda to try and help that homeowner because he's been battling. But
Yeah, someone definitely lives in the middle one at 149, but the other two.
I know, ironically, Peter's son lives on the one up in the hill on the right, so that one's occupied. So at least there's some vested interest in these. They will come back and we will keep on top of that 151 Middle.
Okay. All right, the next up is 84 Main Street, restrictive covenant compliance. I think this is on the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah, so originally I was going to have Michael Weishan, who has been working on behalf of John Deli Pascoli, come in. We discussed briefly that the restrictive covenant area, that generator and transformer and the structure that's covering the generator is fully or substantially within that restrictive covenant area. So we did get an updated as-built that just shows that little section from David Gordon, who was the original engineer of record for this project, at least with us for the notice of intent. So we received that. So I am now agreed with Michael that it's probably better to wait until the next meeting because I'm going to put in a legal request to town council to kind of discuss the restrictive covenant area and what our ability, if we have any ability to mend, if that's even an option. They have offered to give us 2 feet for every one that has encroached, and it would be in the same kind of area around the beech tree, since that was one of the reasons why the restrictive covenant was issued. So I'm going to be asking council that and just kind of the general recommendations of moving forward. And I know there was kind of some concerns. I think the historical themselves kind of need to discuss and work out. That isn't jurisdictional to the Conservation Commission. We did talk about the landscape master plan. So I did meet with Kevin Miller, who's the chair of historical, and Grant Farrington, who is another member, last Friday to go over kind of their history of the project, because there's supposed to be that landscape master plan that kind of everything hinges upon. And kind of now that the board is turned over a little bit, they couldn't find any records of those documents of the master landscape plan or some of the approvals for some of the other structures such as the generator and the gazebo and like that. So they have some kind of figuring out to do, I think, of what their next step is going to be. After our meeting, I guess Michael Weishand did drop off plans to Kevin Miller, stating that they were the landscape plans. And I did take a quick look at them, and they appeared to be, the first two seemed to be the mitigation plantings that Michael provided us for the violation on the order of conditions for the non-native plantings that we did in June. The next 2 pages were architectural plans for just the chapel, so that was a little random. And then the last 2, it did say a landscape plan dated in 2017, and it looked to be pretty much the same as what our proposed or existing and proposed conditions plan was for the notice of intent, just without grading. So I think they'll have to take a look at that and, determine what their next steps are. But for us, just trying to figure out the process and what our legal avenues could possibly be, just for us to determine. So I will report back at the next meeting. So hopefully we can get that approved by the town administrator, so town council can review for the 16th.
For getting the legal opinion, I know it's been a little difficult to get these things of late. Would it help out, Melissa? Would it add any weight to things if the commission voted to request a legal opinion? Or
yeah, I think that would be great. And I'll probably, if maybe you and Mark are comfortable, just copying you on that email so you're included as well, just to kind of show that this is a motion of the commission and something that we are looking for quickly.
Yeah, it certainly on the surface looks like the town would be disposing of an interest in real property, right? Even if we are taking on an interest in an additional larger area, but that would require a 2/3 vote at town meeting. It's not a simple sitting down, signing a piece of paper to do a little swap. There's a lot to it, and yeah. I wouldn't feel comfortable going forward without a legal opinion. But.
Agreed. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe if Melissa could wave at Mark Purple or Attorney Kellerman, got a vote from the commission. We really need this. Maybe it would get us a legal opinion in time for our next meeting. But if you would accept the motion, I would make one to formally request a legal opinion on this matter.
I think it's appropriate. Yeah. So go right ahead.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
All right.
All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmano.
Yes.
Perfect.
And from my perspective, I would like to have that legal opinion in my back pocket before we entertain a meeting or discussion.
Yep.
With 84 Main Street.
I agree.
Okay. So next up is the S&P bylaw and regulations update changes in town meeting warrant. So I was surprised to see that we're on the upcoming warrant.
We did it.
Is that a good thing?
It is a good thing. Yes. So
are we going to be ready?
We are ready. We are ready.
Okay.
Town council is still going to do a final review of the bylaw in its entirety, but we did get confirmation, so it can be confusing. So let me know if you have questions. We are going to have 2 warrant articles. The first being the motion to remove the stormwater and erosion control bylaw in its entirety, kind of out of the zoning code. So for 30 seconds, it would not exist. And then the second motion would be to approve this amended language that would still be the stormwater and erosion control bylaw into the general bylaws, into the section that town council and town clerk agreed upon. So he already gave some suggestions, but I guess that's the decision between them, and that will come kind of a little bit closer to the end. So the first step was we got it on time to the select board, after Tellerman gave us some input and suggestions moving forward. So we put it to the select board to formally refer it to the planning board. So the planning board will be hearing, because it is moving out of the zoning code, they are only required to make a vote of support or not support on the removal of the bylaw from the zoning code. So that will be on February 6th. If anyone would be willing to tag team that with me and attend that meeting, I will be virtually because I'll just be getting home from vacation, but they are also meeting in person as well. So they're hybrid. I will be going over the amendments only because I think that's very important as to why they should support the deletion from the zoning code. It's not that it is completely disappearing, but a better one is being replaced in the general bylaws. So we have thankfully finalized that. I put together kind of the final versions of a clean version and a red line version, also with comments to further explain those changes kind of in line with those additions and deletions, so that there's hopefully limited confusion. And that's also something that can be used as a handout at town meeting as well, for public information. And then just so you guys know, there's also that other bylaw that I think says sponsored by Concom, and that's that floodplain and wetland overlay district that I mentioned briefly at the last meeting. It currently exists, but wasn't up to FEMA standards. Since the federal standards are more strict than the state standards, each town basically has to have the same bylaw that makes it more strict. So it looks like a lot of changes, but it really is just reiterating what we already do and just putting some more formal language into it. I think the biggest thing that might trip people up is there's an additional section that states permits, stating that a permit is needed for any work within the floodplain, but that is not the creation of a new permit. A building permit or an order of conditions counts as that necessary permit. So the only change would be if we do approve a structure within the floodplain, I just have to keep a record of it, which we would anyways. So it looks like a lot, but it is very minimal, just so you guys are aware. So
Quick question. So the first warrant article will be to remove SMP from zoning, but there'll be a contingency written into that if the second warrant article fails, then it goes back into zoning.
Right.
Okay, good. So we're not in danger of walking out of town meeting, realize we don't have a stormwater.
Yeah, and the warrant article also says the removal from the zoning code with the intent of amended bylaw into the general bylaws. So it's very clear that it's not just deletion. The very next one will be the addition of the amended bylaw into the appropriate section.
Perfect, thank you.
So,
Okay.
being
And
related to a planning board member, I think it would help for that meeting to give, if you have any examples of why having it in the zoning code is a bad idea. I keep getting questioned and I don't have any facts. I just said, I've heard the building inspector,
I think
water sometimes, but I don't have any details on that.
Yeah, I sent to Colleen and Karina the memo that I provided to select board that goes over that a little bit more, but I'll double check. And if there's anything further I can clarify, I'll send that over to the office for them to send out. So thank you for that.
Melissa, it looks like I can attend with you on the 6th.
Okay. Thank you.
is that a Monday night?
Yes.
I can probably attend as well.
Okay.
It might be useful to expand on what Kevin is saying, to have a PowerPoint slide as to why we want to remove it from the zoning code and putting in the general code. Just like here are the problems with it where it's at, and here's what's going to be solved by moving it.
Yep.
So that the general population at town meeting that doesn't really understand what we do and so forth, and the complications around all this, can grok it easily.
Right.
If you know what I mean. And to Ben's point, if I'm just going to ask one more time, if it gets voted to be taken out of the zoning bylaw and the second article fails to put it into the general bylaw, it is written, like Ben asked, that it will go back in the zoning bylaw, even though it was voted out.
I will double check, but that is my understanding from Attorney Tallerman that he specified that in his
Yeah.
suggestion.
Want to make sure that the wording in the warrant article supports that if it fails the second piece, that the first vote is null and void and it goes back in the zoning bylaw.
Because then
It's not dropped on the floor.
exist. Yeah.
That would put us out of compliance with NIPD's as an MS4. That'd be kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I will double check that.
Did town council write the warrant articles?
Yes.
Okay.
Or he provided draft language to Mark, which
Okay.
I think the last draft warrant that I saw didn't have that final language from Attorney Tallerman in it. So if you do see a draft, note that that language isn't final yet, because I think the last one I saw, it just simply said to amend the stormwater bylaw. So they're still working out the kinks on that one, but Attorney Tallerman did send to Mark and myself the actual warrant language.
And is there any other changes in the bylaw itself with respect to anything else other than removing it from zoning and putting it in general?
So I think the major change that, we've already made is just that language for the appeals, that it's going to go to Superior Court. I think he's just going to do one final check on that language and the just ensuring that the home rule amendment still applies, that's the appropriate reference when you're moving it into the general bylaws, and just that those citations, still are applicable within the general bylaws. So as far as I know, there hasn't been any proposed changes other than what we voted on to send to the town meeting warrant. So if there is, I will definitely keep you updated ASAP, but Tallerman hasn't brought up anything that he sees as of yet. So I'm hoping that is the case.
Okay. All right. All right. Any further discussion on that?
Just one last quick question. Not that I think this is going to happen, but if anything came up that made us uncomfortable, we can pull the warrant article up to like a day or two before the town meeting, correct?
I think so. And I think you can do it. If not the day of,
you can withdraw it at the meeting itself.
Mhm.
Okay. So just if it, just because things are so down to the wire, funky things can happen, but we have that final out if we need to.
Because I think technically the sponsor is Concom and Select Board. So worst case scenario, we can request Select Board to withdraw the article as a sponsor if we can't.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been at town meeting where they've withdrawn it minutes before they were going to bring it up.
Now that you mention it, yeah.
Usually people want to know why at that point, like what happened to it, what's going on. But
I think it requires a vote, and it almost always passes. But there was one time recently where it didn't. And so,
but yeah, certainly, as far in advance as you possibly know is always better.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so let's have an update on the Breakneck Hill dump activity.
So we did kind of have the final kind of update today, down to the wire as well. So I did get confirmation from Liz, who's the other kind of within town council who's dealing just with Breakneck Hill dump for this. She discussed with DEP as we got the amended ACO back because we could not come to an agreement, unfortunately, with Ms. Fallon for access. So Mass DEP has agreed that since we have been working with her for almost a year now, it was February, I think 8th, that I initially sent her the draft access agreement, that, we've kind of done our due diligence, and we have attempted, Mass DEP has attempted, and, you know, has had direct conversations with her and trying to resolve this as well. So they have agreed that the town does not have to clean up the abutters property, and that the cleanup plan will only be necessary for the town-owned portion. So we got the draft new ACO today, and DEP did agree that the only acceptable way to clean up is going to be a dig and haul. So previously, the kind of plan was that our LSP was going to kind of outline an analysis for us of, you know, 3 to 5 potential options that the town could consider for cleanup of Breakneck Hill Farm Dump. And since then, DEP, always the preferred route was the dig and haul, but typically that is the more expensive option. So our LSP just wanted to ensure that we had all the applicable information so that we could decide. But DEP has stated it's a dig and haul. So we are then moving straight into amending that initial assessment plan just to take the abutters property out. So that is the final assessment plan of record. And then he'll go straight into the cleanup plan so that we can have that cost ready for town meeting, which will be also pretty down to the wire. So the time is kind of unfortunate. It took a long time to even get to this point, but Taylor from TRC is on top of it and understands the timelines for town meeting to get that money for appropriation. So as of now, we are still on track to have the correct amount within the warrant article for funding of the Breakneck Hill dump in March. And that keeps us on plan for the cleanup in FY 24 starting on July 1st. So we have made progress, I think, more so in the last 6 hours than we have in a while. But I believe the next select board meeting, they should have that ACO revised one to be able to sign. And like I said, it's just taking Alexis's property out and just stating that the town, you know, has these timelines for their property. That's about it.
So I can see this coming up at town meeting that we're going to clean up our part of the dump, but she doesn't have to clean up her part of the dump.
She still is legal. So this is where we were trying to clean up her side because she is legally obligated to clean it up. So the town was, you know, kind of trying to do a best communication and saying, you know, we will clean up the, you know, project as a whole, even though it crosses property lines. So
we will clean up the dump in its entirety.
Yeah.
Including her section.
Correct. But
she has refused to let us do that.
Not that necessarily she's refused. There was just some liability issues that, you know, we could not come to an agreement on that was enough to not be able to come to a mutually agreeable access agreement. So I do want to make that clear, as Alexis did work with us in trying to find some language, but unfortunately it wasn't acceptable for the town to accept. So we technically Mass DEP can hold her to the full extent to clean up the dump on her property. And she is aware of that. You know, that was part of the conversations that Mass DEP was having with her during all this discussions to try and, you know, figure out what an agreeable access agreement could be. So it is unfortunate, but she still is technically liable to the solid waste regulations and removal as they are aware of it, that it exists on her property.
Can I ask a quick question? Melissa, was she working with an attorney? Or you might not be aware, but.
She is an attorney. So she also had her own engineering firm that was reviewing the site assessment, et cetera.
Okay.
I think from Ty and Bond, if I remember correctly. So that he's been involved as well in reviewing the site assessments and, you know, providing comments, et cetera. So she's kind of been doing the legal aspects, and then Matt Abrams has been doing the environmental kind of review of it.
Okay, no, good. That makes me feel a little better about that. I was afraid of that wasn't the case. And
agreed.
But anyhow, thanks.
That's all I got.
Okay. All right. I think we reached the end of the agenda, and we have some order conditions to deal with for a couple of closed hearings and a COC.
Yes. So first up, we had 200 Turnpike. For the stormwater management permit itself, the only special conditions that I have was in terms of the waiver technically for the stormwater volume and that increase with the note that, it is de minimis and due to the calculations will not cause issues. So I will put that specific citation in. And then I will also put about the invasive management plan and removal. I think that just having it in both places was useful. And under the order of conditions, we have that the wetland line is only being confirmed for this project. The invasive management plan shall be reviewed and approved prior to implementation at the pre-construction meeting. Also with the HydroCAD calc statement, because they are required for the stormwater standards as well. The only thing that we didn't necessarily specifically talk about would be the waiver to the 20-foot for the BLSF, but the commission can still make that vote within their findings of this issuance. So that would be included as long as you are comfortable with that. And then no documentation on the delineation was submitted for the BVW data forms, and that the property does lie within an outstanding resource water, and the WPA Form 3A shall be revised and submitted within 30 days of the OOC issuance. I think that's it.
So the 20-foot waiver, I think that's been issued on this property a number of times for driveway paving and other things, closer to the building.
At least on 206 it has. I don't know about specific.
Oh, okay. Yeah. 206. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
And that's also being BLSF, as long as the flood storage isn't changing, it's not like 20 feet from a BVW where there's a big habitat impact. This is more of flood storage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ben, do we want to mention anything about the limitations of the tool with respect to the increase?
It's kind of a long rabbit hole to go down to make even a cogent explanation. Trying to think about a succinct way of putting it. I kind of like Melissa's language that the change in the 2-year storm maximum flow rate and volume between existing and proposed is de minimis, and will have no impact on abutting.
No adverse impact. Yeah.
No adverse impact on abutting properties. Okay. And the fact is, it drains pretty quickly down in that little orphaned part of the reservoir right next to Route 9 is where it ends up pretty quickly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I can, in Fussin O'Neill's comment letter, the last one, they specify it's the western discharge point still has a small increase of volume in the 2-inch storm.
2 years.
So I can just state that the commission finds that this small increase of equal to or less than 20 cubic feet is a de minimis impact and will not have any adverse impact on abutting properties.
Okay. That sounds good. Anything else from others? No. Do I hear a motion to accept as modified, edited by Melissa?
So
Is this for both permits as well as we just discussed? Because I kind of just want both.
Both.
Perfect.
So moved.
Yep.
Second.
Is there a second?
Got Liz. All right. Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmato.
Yes.
Perfect. And then for Eversource, I had, if dewatering is necessary, notification and approval shall be submitted by the conservation agent. Silt sacks should be installed and remain unless prohibited by MassDOT or the town. Agent shall be notified and appropriate adjacent DMP shall be installed. So that was one of their comments in their response, is that they do install silt sacks, but sometimes because of weather, Mass DOT mandates them to take them out. So if that's the case, I did put that in there that they would be allowed to take them out, but they do have to have something else to kind of replace it that would be acceptable. That's all that I had for those.
So just food for thought with that project. Typically, they tighten up every night on those projects, which is great. You know, we could probably have some sort of weather related thing in there. And it's just, that's when the state's going to make them yank them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, make it tight first. We're good to go.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? No. All right. So do I hear a motion to issue the permits per updates and edits that Melissa just recited?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmato.
Yes.
All right, I think that's it because
We have a COC.
You voted.
Oh, okay. We already did that.
Yeah.
Great.
You are
I
good to
feel
go.
like I have to sign still.
I know. I know.
Hey, that's
Pass the
right,
papers
yeah.
around the room.
It's like, I don't even think I've met Liz before. I don't think I've ever seen you in person.
Yeah.
I only met Kevin because we went to the Chestnut Hill Farm.
Oh, yeah.
I'm real, I promise.
I believe you. All right. Well, I will be on vacation next week. If you guys need anything, Laura will be in the office. I am so thankful for her and the administrative support we've gotten. It was the first time that I came back from vacation after holidays not stressed, and I had very limited things to do that she couldn't handle. So I was very impressed and very thankful for her. So I have no doubt that that will continue next week. But if you guys need me, I'll be in San Francisco, so I'll be 3 hours behind, but I will do the best that I can.
Have fun.
Well, hopefully you won't need a raincoat, but we'll see.
I know. I'll hope.
Well, have a good vacation, good trip,
Thank you.
and safe travels.
Thank you.
And we'll try not to bother you.
Okay. I'm leaving my laptop at home, just leaving it, letting everyone know we're not
Good for
having a
you.
repeat of the last time I went on vacation. We had a meeting and my contact got dry. For those of you who were there, we remember that. Okay.
All right, that said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmato.
Yes. You never had a nay vote for adjourning?
You want to try? Maybe
No.
next time. All right, guys.
All right, thanks. Have a good
Okay.
evening.